Sunak's got a record to defend, not only as Chancellor, but as Prime Minister. He's obviously got baggage. I think he sometimes thinks he doesn't get quite a fair hearing. And we were giving him a pretty tough time on things.
Now, what's it like to interview the Prime Minister? Well, one man who's done that, not for the first time, is the Sun's political editor, Harry Cole, who now joins me in the studio and is due to speak to Rishi Sunak again this evening. How are you, Harry?
I'm all right, Patrick. It's been a busy morning.
Busy morning, I can imagine. You're doing this for the Sun's Never Mind the Ballots show, which is on every Thursday night. Clashes with Premier League darts, unfortunately, so I have to watch it on
and the
catch
match
up.
Tonight,
well, yeah, indeed. So, listening to the clips that we've got so far, sounds like Rishi Sunak was pretty touchy.
Did you have any questions about the summit?
Again, you've asked the question, and I would appreciate the opportunity to answer it.
And that's ultimately why I want to be Prime Minister, Andrew.
Okay, with the greatest respect, I'll take my advice from the Chief Scientific Officer and the Chief Medical Officer in Public Health England.
Just getting on and delivering for people.
Have you had a coronavirus test yet?
No.
Yeah, so that's the Prime Minister's typical tetchiness. Did you get a bit of that, Harry?
There was a few. If you let me finish, if you could let me answer the questions, yes, there was. Which is, I mean, look, he's there. He's got a record to defend. He's got his point across. I think he sometimes thinks that he doesn't quite get a fair hearing. But it was a bit more longer form than we normally get with the Prime Minister. It wasn't the sort of print interviews that last 6 or 7 minutes.
And you're just firing questions.
Yeah, I mean, the way I try to do this, because it's the Sun, but the Sun on TV, I try to address it like it's a print interview and fit as many questions in as possible in the allotted time, rather than spending 10 minutes trying to get the answer to one question. I just sort of pepper gunned him. Is that even a word? I think pepper shot, grape shot. I don't know.
Whatever.
Yeah,
we know what you mean.
So we covered a hell of a lot. I mean, we were sort of based on our Sun readers' questions. So we covered everything from boats to Gaza to his trousers to net zero defence. We were all over the place, and so hopefully lots of answers. Even if he was a bit snappy at answering a few of them.
And you did Keir Starmer a fortnight ago now. How does Rishi Sunak compare as an interviewee to Keir Starmer over the same format?
So it's really interesting because obviously Sunak's got a record to defend, not only as Chancellor but as Prime Minister. He's obviously got baggage. I think he sometimes thinks he doesn't get quite a fair hearing. And we were giving him a pretty tough time on things. Whereas Starmer is obviously a bit more of a blank canvas. It wasn't natural territory for Starmer, the Sun. It was, can he speak the language of some readers? Can he do business with us? He came, I think, itching for a fight. He was quite keen to have a fight on a few things, and we had it out on Jimmy Savile and lawyers and he's defending terrorists and things. But he was keen to have that fight. Whereas with Sunak, I think, as you'll see later, was actually keen quite often to dial down the tensions. So every time it kind of got a little bit heated, it was him, not me. He was the one trying to sort of move on to sort of talking about something else. But I think both of them actually were very good with dealing. We've got our Sun readers panel, our cabinet of readers. Both of them were thrown quite tough questions by them, and they actually dealt with that quite well. And we learnt that Rishi Sunak's parents were pharmacists, in the same way that we learnt that Keir Starmer's father was a toolmaker.
I think that's your best scoop. Yeah, I was going to ask about the Sun cabinet, because a criticism you hear from actually all quarters about Rishi Sunak is that he often isn't great with the public, and that they can say, and that sometimes he might struggle to emphasise, or he has a habit of laughing awkwardly, or if someone were to say to him, Mr. Sunak, I'm £100 better off, he might say to them, well, I think you'll find that the average person is £101 better off. So
he's very boastful. He's a boastful man. He always has a better fact than you. He's almost like he's playing permanent top trumps. And so you say something to him and he goes, aha, I've got this up my sleeve. So that kind of, yeah. I think when voters meet politicians, most of the time, politicians one-on-one are 10% more impressive in the eyes of the voter rather than the person they see on TV, whoever they are. With Keir, I think he has an advantage with the punters, because actually most people don't really have an opinion of him either way, other than they think he's a bit boring or wishy-washy. And actually, the general public, he can actually go much further in convincing people what they think, to take a positive view of him. Whereas Sunak, a lot of people have already made up their mind. They don't really like him. They don't necessarily think he's a bad person.
Well, because they're living in the country he runs as well.
Exactly.
And so has been run by the Tories for 14 years.
He's always coming from a sort of disadvantage as soon as he meets someone. That said, he does have sort of, the last person I sort of saw with those sort of slightly strange reactions to, normal punters was Theresa May. So it could be a lively election campaign.
No, it could be. It could be. And how did the Sun cabinet give him a ringing endorsement?
It was a little bit of a mixed bag. Look, they don't think he's a bad guy, but they weren't convinced on some of his answers. Put it that way.
Interesting. Is it they're hard to please, the Sun cabinet? Because
Sun readers are hard to please. Yeah.
With Keir, they weren't exactly blown away either, were they?
Well, I think they were sort of pleasantly surprised that he wasn't as weird as they thought he was going to be. And now, there was a sort of moment where actually they sort of liked his earnestness. They quite liked his openness. And on the other side of the coin, now that with Starmer, with Sunak, they were a bit sceptical of his evasiveness.
Interesting.
But that again comes back to the blank canvas versus record to defend, and it's tough. But I think it's I think both of them should do it more. The more they speak to people, the more hope they're going to get. But whether they'll slightly cocoon Sunak in the election campaign, I think we'll have to wait and see. But I suspect they might try and do that.
Well, just finally, let's hear what he had to say to you, Harry, about the day's big breaking international story: the killing of those 3 British aid workers in Gaza.
What's happened is a tragedy, and it shouldn't have happened, and there are questions that need answering, and that's why I've been very clear that what we expect is a thorough, transparent investigation into what has happened. But also, I want to see a dramatic increase in the amount of aid flowing into Gaza and closer work with the aid agencies, so these types of things just do not happen.
Punchy. It's probably his punchiest tone yet on Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I asked him whether it was what the sort of tone of the conversation with Netanyahu last night, he didn't shy away from. He didn't disagree that it was a testy call, but again, wouldn't really answer whether it was time to start dangling the stick of pulling out our arms funding rather until the aid goes in. That's very much was a sort of fudge. But we've mostly focused on the domestic issue, so I got that question in early, while the rest of it is pretty much all bread and butter British politics. Yeah.
Well, we look forward to that on Never Mind the Ballots from 7 p.m. on the Sun TV YouTube channel. Harry Cole, TV star, political editor of the Sun. Thank you very much. And you can see that on the Sun TV YouTube channel a little bit later.